Hello everyone. This is the 39th part of the story, I'm Vōldēmōrt. Chapter 238 Royal Visit. A few days passed and the Ancient One received a raven from Asgard, marking the date of the royal family's arrival. Tom was surprised at how easily they found Kamar-Taj, but Asgard does have its own version of magic to help them. The Ancient One always keeps Kamar-Taj in top shape, so she wasn't scrambling to make sure everything was perfect for their arrival. Magic can be used for almost anything, and Kamar-Taj has many runes and glyphs carved into it for self-cleaning, removal of garbage, among other things. Due to this, they only had to warn the masters, apprentices, and other low-level members that royalty would be arriving and to be on their best behavior when that time comes. The experienced masters took this in stride, as many of them have met royalty before on their missions for Kamar-Taj, but the newer master and low-level members were excited and nervous for the day to arrive. 1 week later, the sky lit up and a beam of light shot to the grounds of Kamar-Taj. As the light died down, the entire royal family of Asgard, minus Hela as she is imprisoned, appeared, looking around curiously at their surroundings. The light of the Bifrost burned its circle-shaped rune into the ground below their feet, marking the area as a symbol of their arrival. Every member of the royal family came to see the sorcerers of Midgard, as it interested them all in different ways. Odin came as it's his duty as king to not only investigate Asgard's possible future ally but also to scope out a possible enemy. As a leader to his people, he needs to know as much as he can in case the time arrives where they need such information for the safety of Asgard and its people. Frigga came because she would be taking in Tom as her student if they do become allies, but deep down she is also curious about seeing the unknown sorcerers of Midgard. Thor came for two reasons and two reasons only. To get to know the man that utterly thrashed him in battle and to see if he would be willing to spar again. That's right, Thor isn't one to give up so easily. He knows that he will most definitely lose again, but with each passing battle, the gap would grow smaller between them, even if it's just by the smallest amount. Then there's the black sheep of the Asgardian royal family. Loki Odinson. He came for a few reasons. Boredom being one of them, but that wasn't all. Like his mother, he has a fascination with magic and would love to see the sorcerers of Midgard. What different types of magic could this small realm hold? Loki is ready to steal every bit of magic from this place that catches his interest, especially the method that was used to open a portal to and from Asgard. That is something that would help him immensely with his future plans. Other than that, Loki came to watch his brother make a fool of himself once again. He knows his brother very well and anticipates the coming beatdown that's inevitable to happen. Waiting in the main courtyard/garden of Kamar-Taj, Tom, the Ancient One, and Druella stood there patiently, as the gods of Asgard descended to Earth once again. Though, they aren't really gods. Obviously. Just a race of aliens with far more strength and longevity than the average human. The fact that they're known as gods in Earth's history is odd actually. Did they come down and pretend to be gods all those years ago? Tom thought as he remembered to ask them about that later. Welcome to Kamar-Taj. The Ancient One says with open arms. Would you like to start the tour immediately or should we go and have some refreshments? The tour would be nice. Frigga replies as she gestures to her black-haired son. This is Loki, our other son. He tends to cause trouble wherever he goes, so keep a close eye on him. I know I will. As she says this, Frigga eyes her mischievous son with a look that said, I see everything you do. Mother, don't put those strange ideas into their heads. I'm harmless. Loki says with an innocent smile, but everyone there has already heard their fair share about the second prince's behavior. Even Druella, who knows almost nothing about Asgard, has been warned by Tom not to trust Loki and to keep her distance. Seeing that every person around him was staring at Loki like he's the biggest liar they've ever seen, he clicked his tongue and just ignored them. Ha ha ha, don't be so glum, brother. Thor laughs as he hooks an arm around Loki's shoulder. Take this as a sign of notoriety. Even the people of Midgard know of your mischief. Suddenly, Thor was slapped upside the head by his mother, who was staring at him with a look of disapproval. Don't encourage your brother's actions. He needs to be on his best behavior. If he acts out today, it's not just him who will be punished. She lectures him while glaring at Loki as if to say, don't even think about it. Dear, don't be so hard on Thor. He hasn't done anything. Odin says, earning an eye roll from both Frigga and Loki. Of course, he hasn't. Thor could never do any wrong, right? Loki thought venomously. Chapter 239, Masterbolt. Standing there and watching the squabble between the royal family of Asgard, Tom couldn't help but see them as an actual family. Yes, they have their problems, but in a weird way, they seem to be very close to one another. Once the family bickering calmed down, Tom introduced his fiancée Druella as they haven't met before. So young and already engaged. Frigga says as she eyes her two children with a look that says, why haven't you found someone yet? She's wanted little grandchildren running around the palace for a while now, but neither of her sons seems to be interested in a committed relationship. Both of them just whore themselves out to any pretty woman that catches their eye, then proceed to never talk to them again. This has been something that's plagued her for hundreds of years. Seeing the way their mother is acting, both brothers look away and pretend not to hear or see anything. They're young after all. Both of them are only a couple thousand years old, so why bother with a relationship when they can live out their younger years without attachment? Yes, we don't plan on getting married too soon, but the time will come sooner or later. Tom says as he wraps an arm around Druella's waist. Let's start the tour, shall we? The Ancient One says as she motions for them to follow along. As they leave the courtyard and walk the halls of Kamar-Taj, everyone they pass stops to bow and show their respect. The Ancient One showcased many of the beautiful areas and Eastern architecture of Kamar-Taj, but nothing interested the Asgardians more than the museum-like room filled with artifacts and the library filled with books on all types of magic they've never seen before. When they were being shown all of the artifacts, something surprising happened. As they toured the area and admired the items of power locked inside glass cases, one of the said items reacted to their visitors, choosing them as its wielder. Huh? Thor grunted in surprise as a glass case shattered and a piece of metal shaped like a bolt of lightning comes flying in his direction. Suddenly, every member of the royal family goes on alert. Odin's spear appears in his hand, ready to fight his way out with his family at his back. Loki and Frigga prepare some illusion magic, while Thor was too shocked to react. The metal lightning bolt fires at him like an arrow, but before he or anyone could react, it stops in front of him, as if waiting for him to grab hold of it. What's the meaning of this? Odin exclaims commandingly. Meanwhile, Tom and the Ancient One wore complicated expressions. It seems that one of the artifacts of Kamar-Taj has chosen your son as its wielder. Tom says, giving his mother some time to decide what to do. I have my own artifact as well. As he says this, Tom showcases his vaulting boots of Vōldēmōrt. Of course, he hides the fact that he has a totem of a snake god as his other artifact. He doesn't trust them enough to reveal something like that just yet. Seeing the power of Tom's simple-looking boots, a look of wonder and awe appears on Thor's face as he excitedly reaches out and grasps the lightning bolt. As he grabs hold of it, Thor and the bolt crackle as lightning dances along his body. As far as the eye could see, dark black rain clouds form outside. The sky boomed as lighting filled the clouds as if celebrating Thor's possession of the lightning bolt artifact. Wow! Thor muttered as he stared at the bolt in his hand in awe. As everything calmed down, Odin looked at Tom and the Ancient One for answers. What is that bolt? He asked as he watched his son hold it like the most precious treasure. Meanwhile, Loki stared at Thor jealously as he hoped for his own artifact, but one never came. Poor Loki. If I recall correctly, that should be the bolt of Olympus. The Ancient One reveals with a complicated look on her face. It's said to have been the favored weapon of the god of the sky and thunder, Zeus. Hearing her words, a smile creeps its way into Thor's face. Perfect. He mutters as it goes well with his powers. We seem to have a problem though. Tom states plainly. What's that? Frigga speaks up. Artifacts are only given to masters of Carthage upon their appointment. Thor is neither a member of Camartage nor a master of the mystic arts. Tom reveals, causing Thor to hold his new weapon guardedly. That does seem to be a problem. Odin says as he sees his son's attachment to the thing. As the room descended into an awkward silence, the Ancient One speaks up. He may keep the bolt with a few conditions. She says, getting everyone's undivided attention. 1. As long as we're allies, Thor may keep the bolt. 2. Upon his death, the bolt must be returned to us. Hearing her conditions, Odin's face hardened in contemplation. He hasn't decided on whether they would ally or not yet, but she seems to be using this situation to hurry his decision. As he prepared to turn her down, Odin saw his favorite son's pleading eyes and couldn't bring himself to do so. Fine. Chapter 240 Loki Incident. Does it have a name? Thor asks, completely ignoring the fact that his father just agreed to an alliance for him. He was far too enthralled in the lightning bolt held in his hand to pay any attention to the world and people around him. Yes, I believe it's called the masterbolt. The Ancient One answers. Masterbolt. As Thor repeats its name and the hunk of metal in his hand vibrates, causing a warm feeling to flow through his hand. Everyone just started ignoring Thor, as all he cared about at the moment is his new toy. I guess this makes me your official student. Tom says as he steps up beside Frigga. It seems so. She answered with an amiable smile. We'll figure out the minor details after the tour and the alliance documents have been drawn up and signed. That's fine, let's continue the tour then. Tom says as he and the Ancient One lead them around. While Thor was entranced by his new weapon, Tom and his mother continued the tour. Thor straggled behind, barely paying attention to anything around him. His mother had to grab his arm a few times and steer him away from walking into walls and other breakable objects. Soon, they arrived at the library, which was the place all of them were looking forward to. Besides Thor, of course. Books are the lifeblood of any magical society. Magic can be passed down from teacher to student, but if these people were to die, then this magic would be lost forever. This is why books are kept and usually guarded heavily in any magical society. Camartage has a good amount of security that has to be passed in order to get to the library, especially when you aren't a member of Camartage itself. Asgard is the same. Their books related to magic are all heavily guarded and only accessible to those that are trusted. Of course, not all magical books are locked away. Some books are about mundane things or don't house any powerful magic. These books are usually less guarded and open to the public. At least on Asgard, they are. As they entered the library, all of the masters, apprentices, and others present stood up and bowed before taking their leave. They've already been warned and knew to be respectful while giving the guests some space. What a quaint little library you have here. Loki says sarcastically with a smirk on his face that would make anyone want to punch a hole in it. It's not as grand as the one back home, but I'm sure you make do. Loki. His mother exclaims as she walks over to him and grabs his ear, pulling it towards her slightly. Apologize this instant. Pulling away from his mother's grasp, Loki rubs his aching ear and looks at the people before him with a grim frown clear on his face. "I'm sorry that your library isn't as good as ours," Loki says apologetically. As he says this, everyone rolls their eyes and chooses to ignore him, which is exactly what he wanted. As the tour of the library starts and everyone isn't paying attention, Loki replaces himself with an illusion as he turns invisible and sneaks off to take anything of interest. As he's sneaking away, Tom smirks and remembers that scene where Loki and Thor met Doctor Strange. Thanks to his heat senses, Tom knows exactly where the real Loki is, so he waves his hand and opens a portal below the evil prince's invisible feet. A slight yelp could be heard as Loki falls through the portal, drawing everyone's attention. "What was that?" Frigga asked. "Maybe one of the students tripped in the hallway?" Tom says with a shrug. Looking around the area, Frigga can see that Loki is gone and replaced with an illusion. She taught him everything he knows, so it would be hard not to notice things like this. The problem now is, what should she do? She could out him and hopefully save the situation somehow, but that would get him in trouble with his father. On the other hand, she could let him be and pretend she doesn't know what's happening, hopefully saving her son from any punishment. As she's stuck in contemplation, the tour continues and the fake Loki continues to act normally, as if the real him wasn't constantly falling over and over again. Soon, Frigga came to the decision to out her son, as he could get himself hurt or worse depending on what's stashed away in this place. As she was about to speak up, a portal opened up above the illusion Loki and out came the real one, crashing into the floor. The impact of his fall dispelled the illusion as everyone turned to see Loki suddenly laying on the floor. "Watch where you're walking, boy," Odin berates him and Thor chuckles at his brother's mishap. Frigga sighed in relief at her son's return as she kneels down to check him for any wounds. Knowing only 2 people in this room could make portals like that, Frigga looked up at them with a searching gaze. As her eyes landed on her new student Tom, he smirked and sent her a quick wink while others weren't looking. He has to look out for his fellow student after all. Chapter 241. As the tour came to an end, the Ancient One, Drusilla, Odin, and Thor went to write up and sign the alliance agreement. Thor was ordered to follow along as his father wants him to learn from the experience. If he is to be king of Asgard, he should know how to form an alliance. As her successor, Tom could have tagged along with his mother, but he wanted to stay and get to know his teacher and fellow student. Thankfully, Drusilla was there to go in his stead. She is the Ancient One's student, after all, so she has a right to be there. As the 3 of them were left alone in one of the courtyards, Frigga gave Tom an apologetic look. "Thank you," she says as she jabs her elbow into her mischievous son's ribs. "Ow, what?" he asks as he rubs his side with a frown on his face. "Thank him as well," she says commandingly. "Thank him? For what?" he says with rage burning in his eyes. "He sent me falling for I don't even know how long. Then he had the nerve to send me crashing into the floor." "Yes, but he also saved you from getting into any trouble. Would you rather we go and inform your father of your behavior?" she asked, knowing he would hate that. "Fine," he says and turns to Tom. "Thank you for sending me hurling into the floor. You really helped me out." "You're very welcome," Tom says with a smirk. "If you ever need me to slam you into the floor again, just let me know. I'd be happy to oblige." As he says this, Frigga couldn't control herself and let out a small chuckle, which caused Loki to look at her with a betrayed expression. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she says with a small laugh. Loki has had enough of this and looked up to the sky with an irritated frown. "Heimdall, open the Bifrost," he yelled, but nothing happened. This only caused his mother to laugh even harder at the situation unfolding before her. With the most annoyed expression that's ever graced his face, Loki turned to his mother and looked at her pleadingly. "Tell Heimdall to open to Bifrost," he says, wanting to be anywhere but here. Getting herself under control, Frigga looks to the sky and gives a small nod. Suddenly, the light of the Bifrost shines down on an irate Loki, sending him back to Asgard. When he's gone and it's just Tom and Frigga left behind, Frigga turns to him with a more serious expression. "You should be careful. My son won't take this without retaliation. He's a trickster at heart and will need to get revenge somehow," she warns. "Don't worry. As long as he doesn't take things too far, I'll treat it as a prank war between the two of us," Tom says with an amiable nod. "Good, I'll warn him to not take things too far later," she says as she mentally prepares herself for the war that is to come. "Just be careful, all right? Loki isn't known as the god of mischief here on Midgard for no reason after all. Speaking of your godly titles here on Earth, is there a reason you're known as gods here?" Tom asks as it's been bothering him. Well, back then Thor and Loki came down here for a small quest, but Loki, being the boy that he is, tricked Thor into staying and playing gods for a while. Midgard was very primitive back then, so it was rather easy for them to gain a following. Frigga explains. "Wow, what happened when you and the old man found out?" Tom asked curiously. "We came to pick them up with the Bifrost, but that just made matters worse. To them, it looked like we came down from some sort of heaven to bring their gods back, which some respected while others fought to keep their new gods with them. Let's just say that when we got home, Thor and Loki were in a lot of trouble," she says reminiscently. "Maybe I should find my own primitive planet with life and become a god there." Tom thought as the idea sounded pretty good. Maybe not. I feel like I would get bored after a year or two. Plus, I already have so much on my plate here as it is. Well, enough of that. Will you be staying in Asgard or commuting with your portals?" she asks as Tom would be spending a lot of time there as her student. "I would like to stay for a while and take in the surroundings if that's all right. I have a class to teach in a few months, so I'll have to commute when the time comes," Tom says, and Frigga's eyes go wide at the thought of someone so young being a teacher. While Tom and Frigga were talking in Midgard, Loki just arrived on Asgard and gave Heimdall a scathing look before retreating to his chambers. "I'll definitely have my revenge." Chapter 242, Off to Asgard. Once the alliance was drawn up and signed, the Asgardian royal family said their goodbyes and left for Asgard. Before leaving, Thor challenged Tom to a fight again with his newfound masterbolt, giving him the confidence to maybe even win this time. Though he was turned down almost immediately, as his mother and father knew that a single weapon, no matter how powerful, wouldn't make much of a difference against someone of Tom's power level. Tom was told to get his belongings together and call for the Bifrost the day after their departure, as they have to prepare his room among other things before his arrival. The next day, Tom said goodbye to everyone, especially his fiancée, who was a little sad about him leaving. Although, she does understand why Tom wants to go and supports him. He's getting the chance to live in an alien world and learn their brand of magic. Who wouldn't want to do that? It also helps that they can communicate through the mark at any time, open portals to see each other, and he would be returning when the summer ends. After saying his heartfelt goodbyes, Tom looked up to the sky and called for his ride. "Heimdall, beam me up," he says, and the light of the Bifrost shoots down, consuming him and leaving only its runes behind. Upon his arrival, Tom was met by Heimdall and Frigga, who was patiently waiting in the Bifrost. "Thanks for the lift, mate." Tom nods to Heimdall, who merely nods back and stays silent. "Follow me, I'll show you to where you'll be staying," Frigga says and walks off, expecting Tom to follow as she said. Doing as she said, Tom followed her over the Rainbow Bridge and through the city to the royal palace. I'm staying in the palace? Tom asked as he didn't think they would allow that. Yes, since you're my student, keeping you close is the obvious choice. She says and continues to lead Tom through the palace and to a sizable room, decorated in the usual Asgardian style. These are your chambers. A maid will come every morning to wake you and bring you to me for your daily classes. While you're away, they will clean up for you. After saying this, Frigga pauses and walks over to the desk in the room and fishes a small gold and white medallion from its top right drawer. This, she says, gesturing to the medallion held in her grasp, is the identification pass that allows you entrance into the palace and many portions of its ground. Though, it won't allow you entrance to the royal quarters and a few other key areas. As she says this, Frigga hands over the medallion to Tom. So, don't lose this, right? Tom asks as he grabbed the medallion and stashed it away. Yes, if you lose that, you could be arrested by the guards and imprisoned until someone knowledgeable of your status here finds out and sets you free. Frigga warns with a stern look. All right, when are we starting our lessons? Tom asks, wanting to learn Asgardian magic as soon as possible. Don't rush into things. Take a couple of days to explore the palace and maybe even the city outside as well. Frigga says as she walks to the door. I'll send a maid when it's time for our lessons. With that, Tom was left alone in his new room, in a new world filled with aliens. Well, technically he's the alien here, isn't he? Not long after Frigga left, Tom unpacked his clothes and other belongings. After he finished and was about to explore the palace, the dark-haired second prince walked in without so much as a single knock. I heard a peasant arrived, so I came to see who it was. He says with a taunting smirk. Loki didn't plan on making Tom into his enemy, but after what happened yesterday, he just couldn't control himself. Although Tom is stronger than him, that doesn't mean he can attack him, especially in the Asgardian royal palace, where his status is very high. You should be careful, Loki. Tom says with a serious expression. Excuse me? Loki scoffs. Well, you should be careful of entering someone's room without knocking. Who knows if I could have been naked or masturbating? Tom says as he uses both hands to cover his privates. Unless that was your plan all along. What? Loki exclaims. I'm sorry, but I don't swing that way. I'm sure many fine men in Asgard would be happy to share their bed with you. Tom says with an understanding nod. What? I'm not gay. Loki hissed as his face goes red with anger and embarrassment. It all right, Loki. I understand. Tom nods sympathetically. I won't tell anyone. Your secret is safe with me. At this point, Loki couldn't take it anymore and stormed out of the room, where he saw his brother Thor standing outside. Brother, you're gay? This marks the end of part 39 of the story, I'm Vōldēmōrt. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe the video to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.